as you were going through the academics, what surprised you the most about going through phase one? Because it is a lot of information, and you even had, I guarantee you had some land nav in your background, you had some rucking in your background, you had some of those things, or at least an orientation to those things beforehand. So what surprised you the most about phase one when you were going through?
Oh man, Schoolhouse was as far as academically, it surprised me as a whole. I wasn't really expecting it to be as challenging. I mean, I knew it was going to be pretty challenging, but just didn't understand it was going to be in that depth. And that's not to deter anybody away from it, but yeah, I did have the background. I was like, man, I was a best warrior competitor in the Army. I was like, I've got background in rucking, I've got background in land nav, but the land nav course you do at 3 level is some kind of real. You have to really be paying attention, you know. And it was cool because even myself as a 8-year NCO, I was learning things. I was learning new tricks, how to do things. So those guys they have down there are definitely the subject matter experts. And if you just listen to them, it'll work out. Now, as far as like radio stuff, I didn't really get a lot of time with radios in the Army because, like, again, Intel, I was behind a screen. Yep. But learned a lot of cool stuff, how to troubleshoot those and how to make those work and how to deal with all those gremlins. So, yeah, with that. And then I'm guessing as far as like paperwork tests, because we had a couple paperwork tests on just like subject matter stuff. The best thing with that was just make study groups. That's all we did was study group, and flashcards and just quiz each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And that culture is important to establish, right? Like, hey, we may have to train during this part of the duty day, but it's even more important to get together afterwards. Hey, we're going to get together and we're going to roll out. We're going to focus on this mobility. Hey, we're going to get together and we're going to study tonight, or we're going to get together and we're going to go over gear or procedures or stuff like that. How much time did you find yourself spending after the duty day, taking in stuff from that day and then getting ready for the next day tomorrow?
Oh man. Well, really, it don't really get academically hard until like, I guess like what they call block 3 at the schoolhouse. So the first 2 blocks is mostly just all your physical stuff. And then it's mostly just your gear. And that is the thing you'll spend the most time on at the schoolhouse is, we're done by like 1700 every day, probably. And as far as being done back in your room, showered and cleaned up and like getting ready for bed, you're probably not there until another, 1900. You're probably pushing another 4 hours of like, now I got to get my gear ready. I've got to make sure all the boys got their gear ready, make sure we're squared away for this, make sure we got everybody's rucks look the same, everybody's carrying the same thing. Make sure we all understand, like even before the pits start, we're spending a solid week on making sure all of our gear look the same. Everybody's gear, we understand how to line it up because it's always attention to detail. So that we did spend a lot of time with attention to detail, but it definitely pays off, and you understand that more the further you get along in the training. Because like when you get into your training, when you're out here in phase 2, you start realizing, hey, the smallest details can make a big difference.
A huge difference, right? One grid coordinate, like you're a JTAC, or you're about to be really, really close to now. Like how big can one grid coordinate mess everything up? It's a big deal, right?
I'm going to call myself out a little bit on that one, but the other day I was in my last sim and we do a little thing to kind of keep our friendly grids away from our enemy grids. Put the friendly grids on the left side, enemy grids on the right side. And there was a lot of stuff going on. And I got a little too quick to the gun. And I called out an enemy grid, which was supposed to be on a friendly grid. And then I had to check myself, and that's kind of a checks and balances we have. We check all of our stuff real quick. And I was like, hey, correction, stand by 1. I got to give you the right grid. I gave you the wrong one. So and it was only like 2 numbers off. So, I mean, that was a big, small detail, but it was like a big change.
Yeah, and we get students and people that are getting ready to go in the pipeline. They're like, why does this matter? Why does marking my gear the exact same as my buddy matter? Why does all this matter? I'll tell you what, it matters more than you would know. Be in uniform, having your ruck set up in a uniform way so that if your buddy needs to get in your ruck, everything's in the same pocket. They can just reach in without thinking and grab it because it's exactly like theirs. So, man, that's a great way to drive that point home.